What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to Sam Dunks, the weekly NBA show over at SlabStox. I'm your host, Sam. We are right around the corner from the NBA playoffs taking off. Certainly, that's going to be an exciting time for us. Now, as we are getting closer, we're getting a better idea of what playoff matchups we can expect. We're also starting to see some stand-up performances from various players around the league as teams are gearing up for the run into the postseason. That's giving us a lot to look forward to. And so let's just jump right into it. Ever since Jamal Murray tore his ACL, the Denver Nuggets are 10-4, and they remain one of the hottest teams in basketball. Now, ever since Michael Porter Jr. became a regular starter a couple months before that, back on February 6th, he's been very good. He's averaged 20 points and nearly 8 rebounds per game while shooting with great efficiency from everywhere on an effective field goal percentage of nearly 65%. But in those 14 games since Jamal Murray went down, Michael Porter Jr. has averaged 25 points per game on an effective field goal percentage of 69.4%. In his games as a starter alongside Murray, he was only averaging 13 field goal attempts per game, but in his last 14 games, he's upped that to 16.5 field goal attempts per game. So the Nuggets have acknowledged that they need MPJ to bear much of the scoring burden, and he's really been rewarding the team for their good faith. Now, last week, I mentioned on the SlabStox weekly market update on the Loop app, which is a sports card app that you can find on the App Store or on Google Play, and I'd recommend you go and find that and download it. But I mentioned on my show on the Loop app that it looked like the Nuggets would be in a first-round matchup against the Los Angeles Lakers, which would provide Michael Porter Jr. with the grand stage of a Lakers playoff series to really elevate his profile. Now, of course, things have changed, as has been happening lately. Currently, the Nuggets appear like they'll be facing the Dallas Mavericks, although, again, that's subject to change rather quickly. Regardless, I don't really think it matters at this point. Michael Porter Jr. has proven throughout the season, especially of late, that he is the rare type of pure three-level scorer that just doesn't pop up all that often. Now, the Nuggets are about to have a 26-year-old MVP on their team, flanked by a 22-year-old rookie that's scoring 25 points per game. That's just so rare and so valuable for this Nuggets team in the coming years. Even when Jamal Murray returns next season, you can still expect Michael Porter Jr. to take over that secondary offensive option from Murray full-time, and then it's just off to the races as he continues to improve. So I see really big things coming for the young 22-year-old. Speaking of the Lakers, it's been tough sledding for the Los Angeles Lakers recently, and things really started getting dark over the past week or so. A little over a week ago, Anthony Davis was interviewed, and he was absolutely correct when he said, "We control our own destiny. We have to start playing with a sense of desperation. Even though we are in the playoffs as of right now, we're not that far from being in the play-in game, so we got to play with a sense of desperation." The Lakers quickly were just dropping down the standings. They definitely needed to start playing with some urgency. Oh, and then LeBron returned after 6 weeks to play in 2 straight losses. Frustrated, LeBron James started calling out whatever peon at the NBA league office came up with the play-in tournament. He said, "It doesn't matter where we land. That's my mindset. If it happens, we end up 6th or 5th, whatever the case may be, or we end up in the playoff, whatever that thing is. Whoever came up with that expletive needs to be fired." But whatever. So clearly the frustration boiling over for LeBron James. And then bad news came up next. The next day, Adrian Wojnarowski tweeted out, or actually it was in a story, he said that it is possible that LeBron James could miss more games. James has experienced some trouble making hard cuts and exploding since his return from 6 weeks on the sideline with the injury, sources said. So again, just really dark for the Los Angeles Lakers. And things were even getting so dark that even Kyle Kuzma was airing thoughts to the media about what he thought the Lakers should be doing. He said, "I wish we could get a little bit more time out there with Mark." That's Marc Gasol. That'd be something that would be pretty good for us for sure. And really, if Kyle Kuzma starts suggesting X's and O's in interviews, things are clearly pretty bad. Now, in the 10 games since Anthony Davis returned from injury, he averaged 20.6 points per game while shooting 23.5% from 3, and he shot only 44.6% effective field goal percentage, well below the league average of 54%. on the back of all those miserable performances by their one lone healthy star. The Lakers went 3-10. They're currently sitting in the 7th seed, and they're slated to be playing the Warriors in the play-in round for the 7th seed. Just a far cry from what we all expected coming into the season. And of course, so much of that is due to injuries to their big two stars. But then the last two games, Anthony Davis has returned to his usual looking self. Against Portland in the loss on Friday night, he had 36 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, and a block. Shot very well from the field, 56.5% effective field goal percentage, and 2 for 3 from downtown. Really just good stuff all around, even though it was in the loss. It's nice to see him rounding back into form. And then in the big victory over a very good Phoenix team on Sunday night, Anthony Davis went for 42 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, 3 blocks. Didn't shoot amazing, but 50% effective field goal percentage from the field. Certainly much better than what he's been doing of late. Now, if a healthy LeBron James returns on Tuesday night against the New York Knicks, and Anthony Davis is finally back to cooking like he was in the 2019-2020 playoffs, well, the Lakers are going to be looking very strong once more. In a minute, we're going to head on over to the SlabStox Pro platform so we can take a look at some of these card charts. But before we do, my thought is if the Lakers are strong heading into the playoffs, that could really be beneficial in the short term, even on some of their card markets. Now, it's a different situation across the country over in Brooklyn where, yes, the Nets' big three have only played 7 games together this season, but the assumption in the public all along has been that once they come playoff time, they're going to be playing together, they're going to be healthy, and they're going to march right through the East. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think that's what the assumption of the public has been all along. If that's the case, even if they win, even if they march right through the East, I don't think for the Nets they're going to have that catalyzing moment that would help drive some of their card markets upwards. I could be wrong about that again. But the Lakers, they've gone from being the prohibitive favorite all the way down to just being an absolute dumpster fire through the course of the season. In a hurry, they went from being one of the top seeds out west to looking like they were going to be dropping out into the play-in round, which I guess right now in the 7th seed, that's exactly where they are, which means with the sentiment on the market shifting so much, it could be the case that once the Lakers get back into form heading into the playoffs, there could be that catalyzing moment which helps drives their markets forward, especially since we're talking about the Los Angeles marketplace, which is just about the biggest in all of sports. So let's go over to the SlabStox Pro platform and take a look at what we can find. Pulling up our SlabStox Pro dashboard, looking really fine today. Really excited to hope to share this with you pretty soon. First, we'll be looking at LeBron's 2003 Topps PSA 10 base rookie. So this is not his Chrome rookie. This is just his base rookie. We've seen, looking back over the past 6 months, I talked about this a few months ago, a few weeks ago maybe, I guess I lose track of time. My video on the modern sets are dropping or whatever it is, modern's dead. That's not the case. If you haven't watched that, go back and watch it. But we see it peaking in the middle to beginning of February. We see quite a few consistent high-end sales in this area here. And then we've seen it taper off. And this isn't unique to LeBron with his injury. Yeah, we understand that maybe that's playing some sort of role. But we also see it with Steph Curry. We see it with MJ. We see it with Kobe. A lot of those high-end, GOAT type of cards, they all have been dropping kind of together, which is understandable. That's just how the market works from time to time. So we've seen this card drop off until the beginning of February. We hit around the $7,000 mark, $680 to $7,000 mark. $6,800, I should have said, to $7,000 range. Now we've seen it kind of plateau here. It's a baseline of support, which clearly most people in the market that are interested in buying this, they're not interested in seeing it go below that mark. They see it for $7,000. They think that's a good buy for me. With the Lakers potentially ramping back up here, could be a good buy. Plus, it's LeBron James. We don't really have to know anything more about him. We know that LeBron cards should always have some pretty good long-term value. Looking at the 2012 Prism Anthony Davis rookie base PSA 10, looking at the 6-month view here on the season, up 34% overall. And this is what we've seen as we follow the action as the Lakers started the year and they looked really hot, the best team in the Western Conference for a good chunk of the season. We saw his cards rising up in value along the way. We see quite a few high-end sales right in this span of time here. Well, then early February, Anthony Davis got hurt, and that's where we see some of these consistent values in the chart. Obviously disappointing, and we didn't know what was going to happen. Well, as Anthony Davis starts getting healthy again to come back from injury, the prices start increasing, and then we hit the month of April, and the Lakers have just been pretty much terrible in the month of April. Looked pretty dead, 8-12 overall during the month, and really didn't seem like Anthony Davis was going to come back and change much at all once he got back. If we look up the Anthony Davis Prism Base PSA 10, and then 2003 LeBron 221, and you need the PSA 10. We can compare those slabs. Looking back over the 6 months, again, we see the same thing. Now, with both of these, we see their current prices quite a bit down from where they have been earlier in the season. And a lot of that reflects, again, that most people just probably aren't believing too much in the Lakers at this point. But if you consider the last 2 games, it seems like LeBron kind of called out his teammates and probably was pretty angry in the locker room recently, especially after he got hurt again. We saw the Lakers come back to life. Schroeder should be coming back soon. LeBron should be coming back soon. Anthony Davis looks like he's finally healthy. If the Lakers, one of the most historically popular teams, not only in basketball but in all of sports, if they're able to scream back to life just in time for the playoffs and they make a run heading into the playoffs, we know with that huge fan base out there in Los Angeles, and really their huge fan base all around the world, Lakers cards are always going to be in demand. So this could present a pretty unique buying opportunity for us. Just on the confluence of injuries and disappointment overall, we've seen these 2 markets really just kind of drop off the past couple of months. If you believe that the Lakers are going to continue kind of just stinking it up and LeBron's just kind of going to quit on the season, as we've seen him do in the past, and if we think that Anthony Davis isn't going to be able to right the ship like he did the last 2 games, well then, there's nothing to see here even with this dip. But if you believe that the low point of the Lakers season is done, and if the last 2 games are any indication, and all of a sudden the Lakers are potentially pretty much prohibitive favorites in the Western Conference again, then you might be looking at a really unique buying opportunity. Not that we're really looking to learn anything new about Anthony Davis or LeBron James heading into the playoffs. I'm not saying that we have doubts about who they are as players or anything like that. But just with everything that's gone on, we've seen the market relax on them, and I wouldn't be too surprised to see it ramp back up with added excitement as the Lakers potentially return to their previous form. Another set I wanted to look at with you is the 2019 Donruss Net Marvels insert set. Notice here we do have it in our database as NBA Hoops. Obviously that's a mistake, and we will get that changed. Looking at the then Zion Williamson PSA 9 rookie card from the Net Marvels insert set from Donruss, we've seen just an increase right along the way. Going back to the beginning of the season, end of December is when the season started. This card, a PSA 9, went for $208. That's where the value sat for a little bit until the next one sold for $255. Well, now on the season so far, we've seen an increase of 150%. The most recent sale ended at $510, so really good increase in value. And again, this is for a PSA 9. Now, it is, I think, the perfect card for Zion Williamson. A, it's a rookie. B, awesome insert, kind of a timeless Marvel, comic book type of insert. And it's for the perfect player too. Zion Williamson, just comically strong and, kind of like a superhero on the court, just comical efficiency around the hoop. So I think this card, you're really well positioned in future years to come with this particular card in hand. We've seen that increase in value, and yeah, maybe we'll see it drop off a little bit as we get into the offseason, but I think long term you're going to be pretty well off if you're holding this particular card. Now, while we've seen this increase along the way with Zion's Net Marvels insert, we haven't seen it with everything. A couple other popular ones historically have been Giannis's. He's another one of those kind of comic book type of players. When the season began, he was sitting at $290 on his PSA 10, so quite a bit down south of where Zion's PSA 9 is sitting even. $290 for his PSA 10. We saw it up a few times on some high-end sales, but generally we've been sitting around the $330 range for the course of the season. Most recent sale, though, ended the other day at $210. This is the absolute low point of the season so far, as you can tell. We can look at Steph Curry's also. I talked about Steph Curry a few weeks ago in my video and how his cards peaked, and then they've been on the decline in recent months, which doesn't really make a whole ton of sense since Steph Curry's playing out of his mind in some of the best basketball of his career of late. And yeah, that's what we've seen in the Netmarbles insert set 2. We've seen it drop off from just over $1,000 back in March to now early May we're sitting at $700. Pulling up those two cards head to head. Again, we're just seeing the same story. We've seen a couple peaks here and there for both of them, and then generally just dropping off over the past couple of months. Now, if you believe in this set, you might recognize this as a good time to buy. If you don't believe in this set long term, well then you might just be selling it off. I do. I just bought this Giannis Netmarbles the other day. It's raw, obviously, and I bought it. It's a pretty clean copy. I did buy it because I recognize this to be a good time to buy. I'm only buying it for my personal collection because I'm a huge Giannis fan, so I'm not worried about it going up in price. I just didn't want to spend more money than I wanted to, so I was very happy to see it dropping off recently, and I could buy that at a much better price for myself. But I really do think that this Netmarble set, it's going to be one of these timeless sets. Just with the popularity of superhero movies and everything else in recent years, and the difference between this particular set compared to every other insert set that we see from all these different brands, it's just a beautiful card and really should carry on its value into future years. They brought it back for the 2020 Donruss series, so if they are going to keep bringing it back for several years, and this is the first time around, you look at some of the best players in that set. There's Luka, there's Steph, there's Giannis, there's Zion, and I would not be shy in buying those up if you're able. $210 for a beautiful PSA 10 of Giannis Antetokounmpo, one of the top couple players in the league, and possibly should be winning a championship, hopefully in the next couple seasons. That's me speaking as a Bucks fan. Again, I think it's a pretty good buy. So looking at this set, I like it all around, and I also like it as a buy. And back here, a couple random notes which might portend good futures in various card markets. First, it appears that Pacers' first-year coach Nate Bjorken is not long for the job there in Indy. They're nearing the end of an extremely disappointing season. There's been quite a bit of friction on the sidelines recently, and a number of players and team personnel coordinated anonymously with Bleacher Report to unveil what's been going on behind the scenes in the locker rooms. Not well liked at all is the overall sentiment of the piece with regards to their first-year head coach. And honestly, you could tell that something was up with how underwhelming the team has been this year compared to expectations. Now, assuming they make a new hire this offseason, you have to imagine that they'll go with a much more player-friendly coach, which should pay dividends in the on-court product. There's a lot of good young talent out there in Indy that just hasn't been super investable this year due to the poor overall team play. So my thought is that you can probably head into the offseason operating under the assumption that things will be better next year. I'm looking at guys like Karis LeVert, Domantas Sabonis, Miles Turner. They should be able to carry this team forward, and I have much higher hopes for next year's roster. And next up, the Boston Celtics. They continue to struggle through a season in which everything that could go wrong has just gone wrong. The big problem for this roster has been the roster makeup. The trade-offs in recent off seasons with certain free agents departing and the replacement free agents coming in, it's just left those Celtics with a much weaker and less versatile squad. Now, to top it all off, the news just dropped that Jaylen Brown is done for the year with a torn ligament in his left wrist. Jaylen Brown, who's been one of the lone bright spots in an otherwise forgettable season. I was about to say unforgettable season. No, very forgettable. And we see that disappointment in the market of the two young stars. Jaylen Brown's Prism Silver PSA 10 rookie card is down 23% in 2021. Jason Tatum's Prism Silver PSA 10 rookie card is down nearly 31%. Now, as disappointing as this season has been for the Celtics, the two Jays are both too young and too good for anyone to write them off heading into next year. But I really believe that this season was a bump in the road for a good young Celtics core. Expect the team to turn it around next year. Obviously, heading into last year's playoffs, everything was ratcheting up right across the board. It seemed like every single young player was reaching an all-time high. Even when they weren't playing, things were still increasing right along the way. Obviously, that wasn't going to continue forever, and many things have taken a drop ever since then. Even getting into the playoffs, most people were trying to capitalize on their returns on investment before the offseason, which led to an overall market drop. Nowadays, I still think you can make money, but you have to be much more careful with how you're spending it. Heading into this year's playoffs, there should be some teams and some opportunities for you to make money. Yes, even through the playoffs. But if you want to stand pat and not spend any money now, I understand. Heading into the offseason, start making your plans right now, because we will see that 40% drop heading into the offseason, and then you can buy up, hopefully, and then capitalize at the beginning of next season. So start making your plans right now, both for the playoffs and beyond. And I hope you do well. So again, thank you so much for all of your time. Really appreciate you taking the time to listen. We'll see you next week.